A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. I'm your host for today's episode, Logan Lyles. I'm the Director of Partnerships here at Sweetfish Media. I am joined today by Beau Brooks. He is the VP of Sales at Formstack. Beau, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Logan. Excited to be here.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show. I am really excited to dig into this topic today with you, Beau, of the do's and don'ts of running a remote sales team. I think, it's a common challenge that a lot of folks are facing, especially, in the tech space and in the SaaS market, as we're running, more and more distributed teams, especially on the sales side. And really excited to hear from you. I love interviewing sales and marketing leaders, especially those right here in my own backyard here in Colorado. The tech scene is definitely growing here in Colorado, so excited to hear from you today. Before we jump into today's topic on running a remote sales team, I would love for you to share with the audience a little bit about what you and the team at Formstack are up to these days.
Sounds great. So at Formstack, we are a very simple, user-friendly online form builder. Sounds like a very simple concept, but you'd be surprised. CIOs, CTOs out there, one of the lowest forms of work they can put their developers on is coding forms for different business units within their organization. So oftentimes they will come to Formstack looking for a solution that the actual business users can do themselves. They can self-serve, and we've got the security and the easy-to-use functionality to get forms up and running live, and that works from the SMB space all the way up to the large enterprise. Multiple Fortune 100 companies actually leverage us for data capture on their websites. Our sales team is pretty robust on the inbound side. We have a strong volume on a monthly basis there, and then we focus on the mid-market and enterprise as well. And that's about 25 sales reps that are spread out across North America. So you mentioned managing a remote team. There's a lot of fun stuff and a lot of challenges behind a dispersed team like that.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And, you've had experience running sales teams within multiple organizations. Tell us a little bit of context on the size of your current team, to put a little context to this topic today of do's and don'ts of running a remote team.
Absolutely. So when I joined Formstack about a year ago, it was heavily focused on our inbound group because that was the most consistently running part of the organization. We had about 7 folks operating in that channel. We've since transitioned and tightened that up a bit. We now have 4 folks focused on the inbound channel. And now we've transitioned to that mid-market and enterprise setting within our sales channels. I've got about half a dozen folks in a sales development role that are prospecting new business within a channel focus, a vertical focus, to identify and present opportunities to our account executive team, which are focused as well in several different verticals because the go-to-market is very specific based on the problem that we're trying to solve within vertical. That is about 7 account executives as well handling that group. And then we've got a partnership person as well that focuses on several of the different product lines that we have and really helping, whether it's a marketing agency or a product partner, with a very specific tech stack behind data capture, routing, process automation, and then document generation. So the full life cycle behind interfacing with your customer right out front or your internal customer inside the organization right out front, all the way through getting that data into the person's hands that really needs it to make decisions.
Yeah. So I think in running a remote sales team, there are a lot of things that we can think about. And even as you and I were talking about offline, we wanted to jump into, the ongoing strategies that you need to employ. But, one of the things you mentioned is that it really starts with the hiring process, knowing that you're going to bring someone on, not only in a sales role, but in a distributed or remote environment. There are certain things that you might want to look out for. Tell us a little bit about how you handle the hiring process and what other sales leaders should be thinking about in that same scenario.
I would say one of the largest just table stakes when you're recruiting for a remote organization is transitioning your thinking from this new person that's coming on has to earn my trust with their work ethic and their skill set to granting trust at the outset. Because of that remote nature, you're not on top of these people or sitting next to them on a daily basis. You really have to extend the trust and allow them to break it. So in the recruiting and hiring process, be very cognizant behind what is their internal motivation and their drive look like? Because as we all know, if you're sitting at home, it's very easy to get lost in doing something not work related and day goes by. So you've got to find these people that have that real true, and we all say as sales leaders or business organizational leaders that we look for people with that internal drive and motivation. But when you're dealing with a remote group, you really have to look for that piece. And you can identify those things a lot of times behind history of success is one indicator, because a successful person that has a proven track record is going to consistently perform at that level, whether their manager is next to them or not. And really, I would say also looking for those people that have a difference maker within their drive. They're not necessarily money motivated, but they're motivated behind an intrinsic motivation to succeed, a drive for knowledge and consistent learning. When you ask somebody in an interview how they continue to do professional development on their own, the people that can articulate that well have an internal motivation to do well. The people that struggle or maybe aren't as adept at finding those things, but really rely on their employer to provide professional development, may not be the best fit for a remote culture.
Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying there in, specifically looking for tangible feedback that can point to their personal and professional development, because those are going to be, very key indicators of that internal drive. And the other thing, I heard you mention is, grant that trust up front as opposed to setting up the relationship to where, that trust is going to need to be earned over time. Is that a lesson you've learned over time? Do you feel like a lot of sales leaders get that trust part of it and do it the opposite way? And that's not necessarily set up the culture of their sales team the way that they've wanted to?
Yeah, I think there's a natural part of business where we set up KPIs. Earlier on in your career, they're generally focused around activity. So we condition ourselves to, in sales specifically, we make a certain number of calls, we send a certain number of emails, we connect with a certain number of people in meetings. Those are all measurable activities. So we condition our team to say, you've got to do X, Y, Z in order to be successful. And those should be the things that lead to whether it's closing deals or finding opportunities to pass to an account executive. But that approach or that mentality can be challenging because it becomes a check the box scenario where you're focused on, all right, if I get these things done, I'm in a good spot. And there are also ways to gain that, as oftentimes is unfortunately we deal with in business. So yeah, finding those people that are going to be able to survive in a situation where activity is important, but it's not visibly measured. It may be measured within the data, but it's not visibly measured, is critical when you're dealing with people that are spread out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So the next thing, I know you and I actually talked about this a little bit last time we had coffee together, was, the power of video calls over audio conference calls and audio only calls, both, internally amongst the team and customer facing. Tell us a little bit about, the strategies you've seen employed at or you've tried to push within your own team that have led to, more success both on the internal side and the customer facing side when it comes to using video strategically?
Boy, I'm a big fan of this one, and I could talk for a long time. I would start this conversation with just throwing it out there. We all have probably heard the line that 7% of communication is the words we actually say, and the other 93% is tone and body language. Well, that doesn't come through on video. That said, and I'll tell this with a story. So at a previous job when I was leading a sales team, we ran a test where on half of the calls we turned video on with a customer, regardless of whether they turned the video on. And then half the calls we didn't. We left the video off and just had an audio call. And we had a 50% higher close rate on the meetings where we turned the video on. And to be honest, most of the time the customer doesn't turn the video on. So training a team to feel comfortable with their video on while the customer doesn't, and giving a presentation is an awkward thing, and you'll get pushback from a team when you're trying to do that, but they'll start to see the results. There's a natural interaction. We live in a world that is now engagement over Facebook, over text, over chat, you're dealing with chatbots sometimes, you don't even know it. When you can get face-to-face with somebody, they can see your body language and reactions over video, it makes a big difference. Not only as you're dealing with customers, but interpersonally. If you're managing a remote team, it is so critical to be able to get on a call and see engagement, right? To see that people are emotionally reacting to things that you're discussing, or that they're engaged and not paying attention to something else. It's a challenge and something to get used to, but it makes a tremendous difference not only in your relationships with your team, but also with your customers. And the first time that you get on that Fortune 500 deal where they didn't turn the camera on, but you did, and you can tell that there's a different connection with that prospect than there would have been had you just talked over the phone, it's a difference maker. And these, the companies out there that are pushing these technologies are really doing something great for business in general, as we become such a geographically open and connected society.
We can't name names, but today's growth story is about $1 billion tech security firm. Even though this is an incredibly successful company, they've struggled with cross-selling among their top global clients through an underperforming inside sales team. So how did they solve for this? They implemented a multi-tactic program that included display, email, direct mail, global inside sales, and an enablement team. This program guaranteed pipeline conversions and resulted in a 257% increase in MQL to SQL conversion and an almost 200% increase in closed business. So how did this security firm get these kind of jaw-dropping results? The answer is simple. MRP Prolitics. MRP Prolitics is an insights-powered account-based marketing platform with streaming predictive analytics baked into its core. Integrating multi-channel ABM execution on these insights, MRP Prolitics triggers display, email, direct mail, and global inside sales in real time, helping the largest marketing departments in the world deliver the right message to their customers at just the right time. So can MRP Prolitics get similar results for you? Probably. Find out by visiting mrpfd.com or click the link in the episode description of this interview. All right, let's get back to the show.
I love what you say there, and that you back it up with some testing and some validation that you guys did. I mean, a 50% higher close rate, to me, that's a very strong indicator that the strategy works.
I'd say the other thing I'll throw in there is you'll get some hilarious stories of people who have not used video before, and as they try and figure out how to use video, we've had people join sales calls in bed, in their underwear, in the bathroom. It becomes hilarious, and it just creates some good cultural talking points within the organization.
Hopefully those were internal calls and not customer-facing ones.
Oh, they were the customers that showed up like that.
Even better. I love that. I mean, you make a great point too about, getting comfortable with, having the camera on when the customer doesn't turn the camera on, because more often than not, if we're honest with ourselves and we look at, people that are doing this, that's probably more often than not the case. But, the fact that you get people comfortable with that, and then they see the results and they feel the better connection with the client on the other end of the conference call, video call, whatever it is, I think, then you're going to see results. So the next thing that I know can be challenging, and you've talked a little bit about, being a sales leader of a remote team, is coaching and engagement when you're not in the office together. You can't walk up and put your arm around someone or look them in the eye all the time as often as you can when they're in the office with you. Tell us a little bit about, what you've seen, how you've handled that, what you recommend.
There's the natural flow to training with whatever type of function you're in, where you have whether we follow sort of a Sandler sales training methodology at Formstack, but whether you're on Challenger Sale or if you're in marketing and you're doing a training on crossing the chasm, those things work great, and that it builds a great infrastructure for talking points. When you've got a remote team, it all starts with the relationship, because you can't see these people face to face. You don't know when they're struggling. You can't overhear sales calls and conversations where you find things that you may want to point out. So the number one thing is breaking down the barriers and the walls behind your team's willingness to surface challenges that they're having or struggles and frustrations that they're having. And that a lot of times goes back to calling out the challenges in a remote environment, being honest with your team of, hey, we've got this situation that is challenging. Please come to me and I'll always be here. Like, here's when I've struggled with the problem before, and be very vulnerable. There's a great book out right now, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, which was a lead hostage negotiator for the FBI for over a dozen years. And he really talks a lot about calling out that problem, calling out the negative to get people to open up. So once you get that done, then getting tools in place. We at Formstack use Gong, which is a call coaching tool. There's a bunch of stuff out there like this, but it is a fantastic tool for your team to be able to flag a call, send it over to you, or send it to the group and say, hey, I really struggled on this one, or hey, this is a more complex deal than I've had to work before. Would love to get your suggestions. And you have within the tool the ability to leave thoughts, leave feedback, and have a conversation and create an open environment for people to share. And if you're an organization where maybe you don't want to make that investment, there are simple ways to do it just with a free Google form, or if you want to take sort of the next step up with a Formstack form where that can drive notifications. But get the conversation going. And then the next thing is find, for sales specifically, but it works in other areas as well, find the indicators where people are having challenges. And this goes maybe even without being remote. In a sales process, if you're not getting into enough demos, there might be something going on with the step before that, which is going to be your initial outreach, and identifying where those challenges and drop-offs are on the data, and train your coaching behavior behind those specific steps. It's too difficult for somebody to say, hey, let's work on everything, rather than, hey, I know you specifically are struggling with this thing based on the data. Let's focus on this, and find those indicators to make it less difficult for your team to surface what those challenges are.
I think that's fantastic advice of both, strategically in conversation, opening the doors for people to express their challenges and concerns and open the door for conversations. And then also, strategically using tools that facilitate that, whether that's Gong or, it's a project management software like Trello, or it's,
Absolutely.
a Google Doc that people can collaborate on in real time, just setting up that environment for consistent feedback. One of the things I've heard from other, leaders and sales leaders, Beau, is, keeping people plugged in and morale up within an organization. It can be tough with a remote team, namely because of a lot of the things you've touched on. You're not always reading the situation as quickly or as perceptively as you can when you're not in the same room with folks. And you touched on a few things there as far as, helping keep performance up, but, specifically on the morale and the synergy within the team, which I think can be, very important, especially for sales teams. What are some of the things you recommend there?
To start off, this is an easy one. We had a remote team fantasy football draft last night. Just one thing, to get people together and engaged outside of work. Even with people in an office, this can be a hard thing to do, but when people are remote, it becomes an even higher level challenge. Within sales, generally salespeople love recognition, right? And that's easy to do when everybody's in one place. So finding ways to drive recognition and drive celebration that can be facilitated in a remote environment. Slack is a great way to do that. Every time that a deal goes through, we have a Slack notification come through, and it allows for people to celebrate together. We hold a monthly team rally where we talk about wins. We tell different teams what the other teams have been up to and where they've seen success and the things that they're working on. And then we pair up, as new people come in, we pair them up with somebody else on the sales team, sort of just as an onboarding buddy, to be able to ask questions, and they get to know that person, and then that person introduces them to somebody else. So keeping people plugged in through connections, through getting to know their coworkers and their peers, finding ways to celebrate when they do really well. And then I make it a point of when somebody does something well, not only celebrate it, but I will ask them to pull together that story of whatever they did and why it was successful. Put together a very succinct, maybe a couple paragraph story, and then we either share that over email or we share that in Slack, so that not only can we celebrate what they did, but we tell the story as to why. Stories are so powerful to drive the virality of whatever is happening. And next time somebody is talking to a customer or talking to a prospect, they have that library of things that have gone well and what's worked.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the ultimate sales enablement right there is, those customer stories that turn into, other members of the team being able to use them. So I think that helps boost morale, but it's got to have, an effect on your effectiveness as a sales team at the very same time, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Beau, this has been a fantastic conversation. I knew that this was going to be a great episode, and just knowing that every time I've chatted with you, you've had great advice to share. So if anyone listening to this would like to do the same and make sure they can stay connected with you, ask any follow-up questions, whether they're in the sales community, the SaaS community, or anyone else listening to this, what's the best way for them to go about doing that, man?
Let's start a conversation on LinkedIn. I'm on there on a very regular basis, just /in/Beau Brooks. You can also find us at Formstack.com. My email address specifically is Beau.Brooks@Formstack.com. Love talking all things SaaS, sales growth, SaaS growth in general. So would love to connect and start a conversation.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation, Beau. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Logan.
Becoming a thought leader doesn't just happen. If you want to build a strong personal brand and extend your reach online and offline, you need a plan. Want help developing yours? Check out Impact Summit. This one-day event is bringing together best-selling authors, professional athletes, influential CEOs, and emerging entrepreneurs, all for one purpose: to equip you to lead, influence, and inspire. Whether you're looking to build a lasting legacy with your business or extend the reach of your brand, Impact Summit speakers will share inspiring stories and practical lessons to help you on your way. Did we mention a session on launching and growing a podcast? You guessed it. You'll hear from Sweetfish Media's own James Carberry during that session. You won't want to miss all of these influencers and leaders coming together in Salt Lake City on October 13th. Ready to learn more? Check out influencerinc.co/Impact Summit. B2B Growth listeners can get 15% off the price of their tickets for this event by using the promo code SWEETFISH, SWEETFISH. So use that code, get your tickets today, and get ready to grow your brand and your influence at Impact Summit 2018.